Welcome back to Midnight Affair Tales. Thank you for joining us. Chapter 1. A Father's Day to Remember. The morning was supposed to be special. The air was warm, the smell of coffee filled the house, and I expected to hear the soft shuffle of feet and the excited voice of my daughter, Marissa, calling out, "Happy Father's Day, Dad." But that never happened. Instead, I sat alone at the dining table, my hands wrapped around a coffee mug that had gone cold, waiting for my wife and daughter to join me. Something felt off. When Lillian and Marissa finally walked in, I could tell instantly, this wasn't going to be a celebration. There were no gifts, no smiles. Just a neatly wrapped envelope in Lillian's manicured hands. She placed it in front of me with a smirk. "Happy Father's Day, Dale," she said, voice dripping with something I couldn't quite place. "We got you something special this year." Marissa stood beside her mother, her arms crossed. Not a single flicker of warmth on her face. My own daughter, cold, distant. I picked up the envelope, my heart beating in my ears. The weight of something wrong pressed down on me like a vice. My fingers trembled slightly as I tore it open. I read the first few words. Then the world tilted. Divorce petition. My vision blurred. My throat tightened. I looked up, my voice barely more than a whisper. "What the hell is this?" Lillian didn't hesitate. She folded her arms across her chest and smirked. "It's simple, Dale. I'm leaving you. And Marissa's staying with me. Just sign the papers and move on." I turned to my daughter, waiting for her to correct her mother. To say something, anything. She didn't. Instead, she looked away. That was when I knew. She had been part of this. They had planned this together. A slow, suffocating rage spread through me. I should have seen it coming. The late nights. The distance. The secretive smiles Lillian had when she thought I wasn't looking. But the final knife to the heart? The way my daughter stood by her mother's side without hesitation. Still, I forced myself to stay calm. Because I had my own secret. I slid my chair back, exhaled, and met Lillian's gaze. "Before I sign anything, shouldn't we talk about the DNA results first?" The room fell silent. Lillian's face drained of color. Marissa took a step back. "What DNA results?" And just like that, the balance of power shifted. Chapter 2. The truth hits hard. The weight of my words suffocated the air. Lillian's expression shattered into something raw. Panic, fear, desperation. Marissa's brow furrowed, her voice unsteady. "Dad, what DNA results?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out a neatly folded piece of paper. The truth. 2 weeks ago, I had taken a DNA test on Marissa. I had ignored the whispers in my head for years, dismissed the moments of doubt. But something inside me had begged for clarity. And now the truth was here, written in cold, clinical words. 99.99% exclusion. Not the biological father. I slid the paper across the table. "See for yourself." Lillian didn't touch it. But Marissa did. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the paper, her eyes scanning the words. Then she gasped, a sharp, choked sound. "No, this has to be a mistake." She turned to her mother. "Mom?" Lillian was frozen. She didn't deny it. She didn't try to defend herself. And that silence? That silence told Marissa everything. Her lips quivered. "Tell me Dad is my real father." Lillian opened her mouth, then closed it. Marissa stumbled backward as if the ground beneath her had crumbled. "Oh my God, you lied to me my entire life?" I let out a bitter laugh. "You wanted to serve me papers? You wanted to humiliate me on Father's Day? Well, guess what, Lillian? I was never even supposed to be in this damn role." Lillian's breath hitched. "Dale, we can talk about this." "No." My voice was steel. "You talk to your lawyer. Because I'm done playing the fool." Marissa was sobbing now, the reality crushing her. But I was just getting started. Chapter 3. Let the game begin. The moment I tore up the divorce papers in front of them, I knew the real battle had begun. Lillian gasped. "What are you doing?" I tossed the shredded remains onto the table and smiled. "You thought you could serve me this and walk away clean? You don't get to decide how this ends, sweetheart." Marissa was still crying. I didn't care. Right now, I wasn't her father, because I never had been. I grabbed my keys and turned to Lillian. "By the time I'm done, you'll wish you never pulled this stunt." Her face paled. "Dale, wait." I didn't. I walked out the door, my mind already calculating. Step 1. Cut off all financial access. Step 2. Find out every single secret Lillian was hiding. Step 3. Make sure she paid. In the worst ways possible. Lillian had spent years playing me. Now it was my turn. Chapter 4. Stripping her power. I gripped the steering wheel, my mind working faster than ever before. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a war, and I wasn't going to be the loser in it. Lillian thought she could blindside me, humiliate me, destroy me. She had no idea what I was capable of. As I drove toward my lawyer's office, I made the first call. I want every joint account locked down. Immediately. The bank manager hesitated. Sir, your wife is also listed. I don't give a damn. I will deal with the legalities later. Do it. Now. Within minutes, Lillian's credit cards, checking account, and savings access were frozen. I imagined the look on her face when she tried to use her platinum card for one of her luxurious shopping sprees, only to have it decline. I wasn't done. I called my lawyer, Aaron Cummings, a no-nonsense bulldog who had handled business disputes for me before. Aaron, I need everything you can dig up on my wife. Affairs, financial records, hidden debts. And I need it fast. Pause. Then, this sounds serious. It is. And I don't care what it costs. Just get me the dirt. I ended the call just as I pulled into Aaron's office. When I walked inside, I wasn't the heartbroken husband anymore. I was the man about to make Lillian's entire world collapse. Chapter 5. When Karma Strikes First, Call to Action Number 1. Lillian's call came at 3:45 p.m. Right on schedule. Dale, what the hell did you do? She snapped, her voice trembling with rage. I smirked. Something wrong, sweetheart? My cards aren't working. The bank said the accounts are frozen. What is going on? I leaned back in my office chair, enjoying the panic in her voice. All that? Just making sure my money doesn't fund you and your side piece. You're on your own now. Silence. For the first time, Lillian had nothing to say. You bastard, she finally spat. You have no right. No right? I cut her off, my voice dangerously low. You served me divorce papers like a birthday gift. On Father's Day. You let me raise a child that wasn't mine. And you think I have no right? Her breath hitched, and for a moment I thought she'd start crying. But instead she recovered. You won't get away with this, Dale, she hissed. You're going to regret this. I laughed. No, sweetheart. The only person regretting anything will be you. Then I hung up. And for the first time all day I felt in control. This was only the beginning. She wanted war? She was about to find out who she was messing with. Chapter 6. Her house of cards collapses. Lillian thought she was smart. She thought she had the upper hand. But I had information. And information is power. Aaron called me back the next day. Dale, you might want to sit down for this. I'm good. What do you have? He exhaled sharply. Your wife's been funneling money out of your company for nearly 2 years. Thousands of dollars in personal expenses, spa days, designer bags, 5-star vacations. All paid for with business funds. I clenched my jaw. That's fraud. Yep. And it gets worse. I frowned. How? Aaron hesitated before dropping the real bombshell. Stephen Holloway, the guy she's been having an affair with? He's not just your old business rival. He's also under federal investigation for embezzlement. I sat up straight. You're kidding? Nope. If the IRS finds out Lillian's financials are linked to his, well, she could be looking at some serious legal trouble herself. My lips curled into a slow, satisfied smile. Lillian had been so busy trying to screw me over that she had no idea she was about to get screwed by the system. Aaron, I said, how fast can we move on this? Fast. Do you want to press charges? I thought about it for a moment. Not yet. No, I wanted to watch her squirm first. I wanted her to suffer. I wanted to see the exact moment when she realized her life was crumbling beneath her feet. And then I'd strike. Aaron chuckled. Dale, I have to admit, this is going to be fun to watch. I smirked. Oh, you have no idea. Lillian's house of cards was about to collapse. And this time? She was the one who wouldn't see it coming. Chapter 7. The Other Man's Identity. The moment I heard the name Stephen Holloway, something inside me snapped. I had known Stephen for years. He wasn't just some random guy Lillian had met on a dating app or at a bar. No, this was personal. Stephen had been my business rival for over a decade. He had always been envious of my success, always looking for ways to one-up me. And now, he had been screwing my wife behind my back. I pulled up a picture of him on my phone. His fake perfect smile, his slicked back hair, his suit that screamed, "I'm a fraud." I clenched my jaw. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about payback. I called Aaron back. "Find out everything you can on Steven. Every dirty secret, every skeleton in his closet. I want him ruined." Aaron chuckled. "That won't take long. The guy's practically a walking scam." Good. I wasn't just going to take Lillian down. I was going to burn Steven's entire world to the ground. Chapter 8. The Financial Betrayal. By the next morning, Aaron had a full report on Steven and Lillian's little love nest. It turned out Lillian wasn't just cheating on me, she was funding their entire affair with my money. Luxury vacations, high-end restaurants, designer gifts, all paid for using stolen business funds. I scrolled through the evidence, my blood boiling. Transactions. Receipts. Hotel stays. Lillian had been spending thousands of dollars on this clown while I was breaking my back running my company. And Marissa? She had no idea that her mother's lavish lifestyle was built on theft. But she was about to find out. I forwarded everything to Aaron. "Make sure this gets to the IRS. Let them do their job." Aaron laughed. "Dale, you're a savage." "Damn right." Chapter 9. Lillian's world starts to crack. The first cracks in Lillian's world came fast. It started small, her card declining at her favorite boutique. Then her bank account froze completely. Then the IRS started sending notices. And then, Steven stopped answering her calls. The moment the financial pressure hit, he bailed. She called me frantic. "Dale, we need to talk." I smirked. "Talk? You didn't seem interested in talking when you handed me divorce papers on Father's Day." Her voice shook. "Please, just meet me." For the first time since this started, Lillian was desperate. And I was about to enjoy every second of it. Chapter 10. When the Tables Turn. I walked into the coffee shop exactly 10 minutes late. Let Lillian wait. I wanted her uncomfortable, sweating, desperate. When I finally took my seat, she was already a mess. Her nails, usually manicured and perfect, were chipped. Her face, once smug and superior, was tight with stress. And her hands? Shaking. Good. She cleared her throat. "Dale, I don't know what you've done, but..." I leaned back in my chair, smirking. "What I've done?" I let out a dry laugh. "You're going to have to be more specific, sweetheart. Are you talking about how I locked down our bank accounts? Or how I made sure your credit card stopped working? Or maybe, just maybe, you're realizing that your little affair with Steven isn't as secure as you thought?" Her jaw clenched. "You bastard." I raised an eyebrow. "Name-calling already? Thought we were here to talk." She exhaled sharply, gripping the edge of the table. "I need access to my money, Dale. You can't just cut me off like this." I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "Oh, I absolutely can. And I did. See, you made one fatal mistake, Lillian. You thought you were untouchable. That you could humiliate me and walk away unscathed. But now you're learning what it feels like to be powerless." Her lips trembled, but she wasn't done. "What do you want, Dale? Revenge? To ruin me?" I took a slow sip of my coffee. "No, sweetheart. I want you to feel everything I felt when you destroyed our family. And trust me, we're just getting started." Chapter 11. Steven runs for cover. That night, I got the call I'd been waiting for. Aaron sounded downright gleeful. "Guess what, Dale? Steven just emptied his personal accounts and booked a one-way ticket to Mexico." I grinned. "Running already? Damn, I expected more from him." "You scared him off, man." The second the IRS came sniffing around his finances, he bolted. Typical. Steven was a coward, a con man who talked big but had zero backbone. The moment things got messy, he left Lillian in the dirt. I could only imagine how that conversation went. I pictured her screaming, crying, begging him to stay. And him? Probably shrugging, stuffing cash into a duffel bag and saying, "Sorry, babe. This was fun while it lasted." I chuckled. Perfect. Let him run. The law will catch up to him soon enough. And Lillian? She was finally about to understand what true betrayal felt like. Chapter 12. Marissa's devastating realization. The next morning my phone buzzed. It was Marissa. I hesitated before answering. "Dad?" Her voice was small. "Wait. I need to talk to you." I sighed. "I don't know if I have anything left to say, Marissa. Please. Just, please." I exhaled slowly. "Fine. Meet me at the park in an hour." When I got there, she was already waiting. Her arms were wrapped around herself, her eyes red and swollen. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she took a deep breath. I got a DNA test. I stiffened. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. You were right. You're not my father. I swallowed hard, keeping my expression unreadable. I know. She sobbed. Mom lied to me my whole life. She made me think you were the bad guy. But she's the liar. She's the one who destroyed everything. I studied her carefully. Was this real? Was she actually waking up? Or was this just another manipulation? And what do you want from me, Marissa? Her bottom lip trembled. I don't know. I miss you. I let out a slow breath, feeling a war rage inside me. This was the girl I raised, the child I loved. But she had stood with her mother when it mattered most. Could I ever forgive her for that? I didn't know. But one thing was certain. This wasn't over yet. Chapter 13. A Daughter's Broken Loyalty. I stared at Marissa, the girl I had raised for 16 years, the girl I had loved as my own. Now, standing before me, tears streaking her face, she looked like a child who had just lost everything. And in a way she had. You miss me? I repeated, my voice measured. Funny, because 2 weeks ago you stood beside your mother and handed me divorce papers like I was some disposable piece of trash. She winced. I know. And I hate myself for it. I crossed my arms, my jaw tightening. So why did you do it, Marissa? Why did you stand with her? She let out a shaky breath, her hands gripping the sleeves of her hoodie like she was trying to keep herself from falling apart. Because Mom, she told me things. She made me believe you were cold. That you didn't love us. That you were just waiting for an excuse to leave. And you believed her? She let out a quiet sob. I was stupid. I was so stupid. I stayed silent, watching her. She wasn't a child anymore. She was nearly an adult. Old enough to make choices. Old enough to betray me. Finally, she whispered, I just want my dad back. Her words cut deep, but I wasn't about to let her off the hook so easily. I'm not the one who walked away, Marissa. You did. And now, you don't get to just snap your fingers and have everything go back to normal. She looked devastated, but I didn't care. This was the bed she made. Now she had to lie in it. Chapter 14. Lillian hits rock bottom. The next day my lawyer called. Dale, you might want to hear this. Lillian just got evicted. I sat back in my chair, rubbing my jaw. That was faster than I expected. Erin laughed. Turns out, she stopped making payments on the house 6 months ago. She thought she'd be getting a fat divorce settlement from you, so she didn't bother keeping up with the bills. I smirked. And now she has nothing. Nothing but a motel room and a mountain of debt. The thought of Lillian, once so proud, so smug, so sure of herself, now reduced to a broke, desperate mess, should have made me feel something. But all I felt was satisfaction. Erin cleared his throat. One more thing. Steven's officially gone. The feds are looking for him, but no one knows where he is. I chuckled. Typical. He ran the second things got tough. And he left Lillian to deal with the fallout. I leaned back, a slow grin forming. Karma's a bitch, isn't it? A few hours later my phone rang. Lillian. I stared at her name on the screen, debating whether or not to answer. Finally I picked up. Her voice was shaky, desperate. Dale, please. I need your help. I grinned. Oh, sweetheart. That's too damn bad. Then I hung up. Let her suffer. Chapter 15. When begging doesn't work, call to action number 2. The next morning I opened my front door and found Lillian standing there. She looked like hell. Her once perfect hair was a mess, her expensive clothes were wrinkled, and the dark circles under her eyes told me she hadn't slept. For the first time in years she didn't look like Lillian the Ice Queen. She looked weak. You're really out of options, aren't you? I said, crossing my arms. Her bottom lip trembled, but she held her ground. I made mistakes, Dale. But I don't deserve this. I let out a dry laugh. No? You don't deserve to be broke? Homeless? Abandoned? Funny, because that's exactly what you wanted for me. She flinched. I was angry. You were selfish, I interrupted coldly. You wanted to humiliate me. To leave me broken and powerless. And now, you're the one with nothing. Tears filled her eyes. I'll do anything, Dale. Just help me. I tilted my head. Anything? She nodded frantically. Yes, please. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. Then here's what I want you to do, Lillian. She swallowed hard. Anything, she whispered. I smiled. I want you to turn around and walk away. Because I will never ever help you. Her face crumpled. And then I shut the door in her face. Let her finally understand what rock bottom feels like. Chapter 16. The Last Thread of Hope. Lillian didn't leave right away. Even after I shut the door in her face, I could hear her muffled sobs on the other side. For years she had been the one calling the shots, making the rules, playing with lives like a game of chess. Now, she was just a broken woman standing in the cold, waiting for mercy from the man she tried to destroy. But I wasn't feeling merciful. After a minute of silence, I turned away from the door and walked back into my house. Then came the knock. Soft at first. Then harder. Dale, please. Just talk to me. I ignored it. She kept knocking. Then a few minutes later her voice changed. The begging was gone. The rage was back. You think you won, Dale? She spat, her voice shaking with anger. You think you're the bigger person? You're just as pathetic as I thought you were. I chuckled to myself. There it is. The real Lillian. I swung the door open and looked her dead in the eye. No, sweetheart. I didn't win. You just lost. She glared at me, nostrils flaring. I swear, Dale, you'll regret this. I smirked. No, Lillian. The only regret here is yours. She opened her mouth to say something, but I slammed the door in her face again. I waited this time. Listen. And after about a minute, I heard the shuffle of her feet as she finally walked away. She had nothing left. And for the first time since this entire nightmare started, I felt free. Chapter 17. Marissa's Final Choice. A week later, I was sitting on my back porch, sipping a beer and watching the sunset when my phone buzzed. Marissa. I let it ring twice before picking up. Hey. A hesitant pause. Then, hey, Dad. It wasn't lost on me that she still called me that. That after everything, the betrayal, the truth about her real father, the choice she had made to side with her mother, she still wanted to hold on to that part of me. What's up? I asked. She hesitated. I left, Mom. I sat up straighter. You what? Her voice cracked. I moved out. She's losing it, Dad. She's drinking all the time, she won't get a job, and she just sits there blaming everyone but herself. I couldn't take it anymore. I didn't say anything. I just let her talk. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have never believed her. I should have never turned my back on you. I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of everything settle in my chest. Where are you now? At a friend's house. But I don't know how long I can stay here. I rubbed my forehead. This was the moment. The choice I had to make. Did I take her back? Or did I leave her to deal with the consequences of her own choices? I sighed. Come home, Marissa. Her breath hitched. Really? We'll figure it out. But this time? No lies. No manipulation. If you want a relationship with me, it's going to be built on honesty. Silence. Then, I understand. Thank you, Dad. And just like that, the war with Lillian was over. But my relationship with Marissa? That battle was just beginning. Chapter 18. The Final Betrayal. I thought Lillian was done. I thought she had finally accepted her fate. I was wrong. The attack came in the form of an emergency court notice. I opened the envelope and skimmed the document. Divorce proceedings had escalated. Lillian was now suing me for spousal support. I laughed. Actually laughed. This woman had the nerve, the absolute audacity, to try and squeeze money out of me after she had already lost everything. I called Aaron immediately. Tell me I'm reading this wrong, I said, waving the papers in the air even though he couldn't see them. Aaron sighed. Nope. She's officially desperate. And since the marriage lasted over 15 years, she thinks she's entitled to financial support. I clenched my jaw. She stole from me, Aaron. She committed fraud. Hell, she used my money to finance her affair. I know. And we're going to fight it? I exhaled, forcing myself to calm down. This wasn't over yet. Lillian wanted one last battle? Fine. Let's go to war. Chapter 19. The Final War Begins. I sat in my lawyer's office, gripping the lawsuit papers in my hands so tightly they nearly ripped. Lillian had no shame. No limits. No self-awareness. After lying to me for 16 years, betraying me, humiliating me, and stealing my money, now she wanted me to pay her to keep living her miserable life? I slammed the papers onto Aaron's desk. Tell me we can crush this in court? Aaron leaned back, rubbing his chin. We can. But she's playing the long game, Dale. She's hoping that dragging this out will drain you financially. I scoffed. She thinks I'll cave? Aaron smirked. That's what she's banking on. I exhaled through my nose, already feeling the fire building in my chest. Then let's make sure she regrets it. We went over every legal loophole, every piece of evidence. Lillian wasn't just going to lose, she was going to be humiliated in court. She wants a war? I muttered under my breath. Fine. Let's burn it all down. Chapter 20, Lillian's Public Humiliation. Call to action number 3. The day of the court hearing, Lillian arrived in her usual fake confidence. Dressed in an expensive-looking outfit, probably the last expensive thing she owned, she strutted into the courtroom as if she still had the upper hand. I barely looked at her. She was nothing to me now. The judge read through the case details, then turned to Aaron. Mr. Kingston, what is your response to Mrs. Kingston's request for spousal support? Aaron stood. Your Honor, we have substantial evidence that Mrs. Kingston not only committed marital fraud but also stole from Mr. Kingston's business. Furthermore, her claims of financial need are directly tied to her involvement with a fugitive currently under federal investigation. Lillian's face drained of color. The courtroom went dead silent. The judge leaned forward. You have proof of these claims? Aaron handed over a thick file. Every transaction. Every fraudulent expense. And testimonies confirming Mrs. Kingston's affair with Stephen Holloway, who is now on the run from the authorities. Lillian's breath hitched. This is ridiculous, she blurted out. I had no idea Stephen was. The judge held up a hand. Mrs. Kingston, do not speak unless addressed directly. Her mouth snapped shut. I sat back watching her crumble. For the first time she looked afraid. Good. Aaron continued. Given these circumstances, we not only request the immediate dismissal of her spousal support claim, but we also seek legal compensation for damages done to Mr. Kingston's business due to Mrs. Kingston's financial misconduct. The judge nodded. Agreed. Mrs. Kingston, your request for support is denied. Additionally, you are now liable for financial damages to your former husband's company. Silence. Then Lillian gasped. No, that's not fair, she cried, standing abruptly. I'm the victim here. The judge sighed heavily. Mrs. Kingston, if you continue with this outburst, I will hold you in contempt. Lillian sat down slowly, her face ashen with horror. This was it. The moment she realized she had truly lost. She had played her game. And she had failed. Chapter 21, When the Dust Settles. After the hearing, I walked out of the courthouse, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. Lillian had no more cards to play. No money. No husband. No respect. She was truly alone. Aaron clapped me on the back. That was satisfying to watch. I smirked. You have no idea. Then I heard a voice behind me. Dad. I turned to see Marissa. She stood awkwardly, hands stuffed in her jacket pockets. There was a hesitation in her eyes, like she wasn't sure if she had the right to be there. I sighed. You saw all of that? She nodded. She's a mess, Dad. I exhaled slowly. I know. She bit her lip. I don't want to end up like her. That was it. That was what she was truly afraid of. I softened slightly. You won't. As long as you learn from this. She let out a shaky breath. Do you think we can fix this? I studied her carefully. I had every right to push her away, to remind her that she chose Lillian over me. But in the end, she was still my daughter. I sighed. We can try. Her lips trembled before she nodded. For the first time in weeks, I saw real relief in her eyes. Maybe, just maybe, we could heal. But Lillian? Her suffering was far from over. Chapter 22, Lillian's Last Attempt at Redemption. Lillian was a lot of things, a liar, a manipulator, a cheater, but she was never a quitter. Even when she had nothing left, she still tried to claw her way out of the grave she had dug for herself. 2 days after the court ruling, I got another call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. Dale? I closed my eyes. Lillian. Her voice was hoarse, weak. What do you want? I asked, my tone cold and emotionless. She exhaled shakily. I don't know where to go. I have nothing left. I lost the house, my job, my savings. Marissa won't even speak to me anymore. I leaned against the counter, gripping the phone tighter. And that's my problem, how? She sniffled. Dale, please. You have every right to hate me. I deserve it. But we were together for so many years. I just need a place to stay. Just for a little while. Please. I almost laughed at the sheer audacity. Lillian, I said slowly, are you seriously asking me for a place to stay after everything you did? She let out a broken sob. I don't have anyone else. That part was true. Stephen was gone. Her so-called friends had abandoned her the second her money dried up. Marissa had walked away disgusted. And now she was calling the one person she had done everything in her power to destroy. And she expected me to help her? I took a deep breath. Lillian, I said, let me be very clear. The last thing I will ever do is give you a place to stay. You made your bed. Now lie in it. She let out a choked sound like she couldn't believe I was really going to let her rot. Good. Let her feel it. Let her feel what true consequences felt like. Goodbye, Lillian. I hung up. And I never answered her calls again. Chapter 23, Marissa's Final Decision. 3 weeks had passed since Lillian's life had completely crumbled. In that time, Marissa had been trying, really trying, to rebuild our relationship. She stayed at my house, cleaned up after herself, even started helping me cook dinner. But I could tell she was carrying guilt. One evening after we finished eating, she finally spoke. Dad, do you think I'm like her? She asked quietly. I set down my fork and met her gaze. What do you mean? She exhaled slowly. I was stupid. I believed everything she told me about you. And I didn't just believe it, I treated you like you were the villain. I hurt you. I didn't say anything. She swallowed hard. I don't want to be like her. I don't want to be someone who manipulates and lies to get what they want. I sighed. You're not like her, Marissa. You made a mistake, yeah. And it hurt. But you're here now. That means something. Her bottom lip trembled. But what if I screw up again? I gave her a small smile. Then we deal with it. Together. She let out a shaky breath and nodded. I love you, Dad. It had been so long since I heard those words from her. I didn't say it back right away. Not because I didn't love her, because I did. But love wasn't just words. It was actions. Trust. Effort. But as I looked at her, I realized she was truly trying. So I reached out and squeezed her hand. I love you too, kiddo. And for the first time in a long time, we were finally on the same side. Chapter 24, The Last Straw. I should have known Lillian wouldn't just fade away quietly. Even after everything, even after losing everything, she still had one last desperate play left in her. I was at work when Aaron called. We have a problem, he said immediately. I sighed. What now? Lillian was seen outside your house last night? My blood ran cold. Excuse me? Your neighbor saw her. She was standing outside for a while, then left. Didn't knock, didn't do anything. Just stood there. I clenched my jaw. Lillian had officially lost her mind. Should I be worried? I asked. Aaron hesitated. Honestly? I don't think she's dangerous. Just desperate. But if she starts showing up again, we might need to file a restraining order. I exhaled through my nose, trying to push down the frustration bubbling inside me. Lillian had burned every bridge she had. She had stabbed me in the back, alienated our daughter, ruined her reputation, and lost everything. And now she was nothing but a ghost of the woman she used to be. A pathetic, lost soul, wandering around looking for someone to save her. But I wouldn't be the one to do it. She had made her choice. Now she had to live with it. And this time? I wasn't looking back. Chapter 25, When Rock Bottom Hits. Lillian had been reduced to a shadow of her former self. The once powerful, manipulative woman who played me like a fool was now a nobody. She had lost her house, money, reputation, and even her daughter. And now she was lurking outside my house like a stray dog. I should have felt pity. I didn't. The next evening, I got home from work and immediately noticed something off. A figure was sitting on my front porch steps, head down, arms wrapped around her knees. Lillian. She looked awful. Her hair was unkempt, her clothes wrinkled, her once flawless skin now dull and tired. I sighed, already exhausted from the sight of her. What do you want, Lillian? She didn't look up. I have nowhere else to go. Not my problem. She let out a small, pathetic laugh. I figured you'd say that. I folded my arms. Then why are you here? She lifted her head slowly, eyes glassy and empty. Because I don't know what else to do. For the first time I saw it. The raw, ugly truth. She wasn't here to manipulate. She was here because she was genuinely broken. And still I felt nothing for her. I shook my head. You made this bed, Lillian. Now lie in it. Her lips trembled. You really don't care, do you? I let out a slow breath. No, I don't. And then I walked inside, closing the door on her forever. Chapter 26. The Last Goodbye. That night, I sat in my living room, staring at nothing in particular. It was over. The war. The rage. The revenge. It had all come full circle. Lillian was a broken woman, and I was finally free of her chains. Then my phone buzzed. A text. From Marissa. Marissa, Mom called me. She's checking into a shelter. I don't know what to do. I sighed. She was still struggling with the guilt, still trying to figure out if there was a way to fix things with her mother. But some things weren't meant to be fixed. I called her back. Listen, Marissa. Your mother made her choices. Now she has to live with them. That's not on you. She sniffled. But she's still my mom? I softened. I know. And you have to decide what that means for you. But just remember one thing, don't let her drag you down with her. Silence. Then a small hesitant oi. She was growing, learning. And so was I. This was the last goodbye. The final moment where I truly let go of Lillian forever. And it felt damn good. Chapter 27. The Best Father's Day Ever. A year later, things were peaceful. I had rebuilt my business, made smarter investments, and even started seeing someone new. Nothing serious yet, but real. Honest. Healthy. Marissa had gone to therapy, worked through her guilt, and was slowly becoming the young woman I had always hoped she'd be. And today? Today was Father's Day. I was sitting in the backyard, grilling steaks, when Marissa walked up with a small wrapped box. She hesitated before handing it to me. Happy Father's Day, Dad. I smirked. No divorce papers in here, right? She laughed, shaking her head. No. Just open it. I unwrapped the box and found a simple engraved keychain. Read. The man who didn't have to be my father, but chose to be anyway. I swallowed hard. She sniffled. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness overnight. But I'm trying. And I wanted you to know how much you mean to me. I pulled her in for a hug, squeezing her tight. You're my daughter, Marissa. No DNA test will ever change that. She let out a shaky breath. Thank you, Dad. And for the first time in years I felt it. This was the best Father's Day of my life. Chapter 28. Lillian's Final Attempt. Just when I thought everything had settled, Lillian resurfaced one last time. It had been almost a year since I shut the door in her face. A year since she lost everything. And yet, she still wasn't done causing damage. It started with a phone call. Not from her, from Aaron. Dale, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Lillian just filed a lawsuit against you. I nearly dropped my coffee. Excuse me? She's claiming emotional distress and defamation. Says you destroyed her reputation and left her with nothing. I barked out a laugh. Are you kidding me? Wish I was, Aaron muttered. She's grasping at straws, but technically it's a real case. If she finds a judge sympathetic enough, this could be annoying to deal with. I ran a hand down my face, feeling the last bit of patience I had snapped. Lillian was like a roach. No matter how many times I crushed her, she still crawled back. I took a deep breath. Fine. Let's deal with it. And this time? I want her buried so deep she can never come back. Aaron chuckled. Now you're speaking my language. Chapter 29. Destroying her for good. I wasn't going to just fight back. I was going to make sure this was Lillian's final downfall. Aaron and I put together a counter lawsuit, not just a defense. We accused Lillian of frivolous litigation, intentional emotional distress, and defamation against me. We gathered every piece of evidence from the past year, her attempts to harass me, her past fraud, her known lies. And when we walked into the courtroom, Lillian looked like she knew she had already lost. She was thinner, tired-looking, her once polished appearance completely gone. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The judge barely took 20 minutes before throwing out her case and approving my countersuit. By the end of the day, Lillian owed me more money than she could ever pay. And just like that, she was done. I walked out of that courthouse, took a deep breath, and smiled. For the first time in years, I was completely free. Chapter 30. Moving on. The months after Lillian's final defeat were some of the best of my life. Marissa had officially moved on from her mother. She was doing great in college, studying business, and even dating a guy I actually approved of. I had finally let myself start over too. I was seeing someone, a woman who was kind, honest, and nothing like Lillian. One evening, Marissa and I sat on the patio watching the sunset. She turned to me and asked, "Have you heard from Mom?" I shook my head. "No. And I hope I never do." She nodded slowly. "Me too." She didn't even hesitate. And that was when I knew she was finally free too. I smiled, leaned back, and enjoyed the peaceful silence. Lillian was gone. And our lives were finally ours again. Chapter 31, The Ghost of the Past. For the first time in years I felt at peace. No more battles, no more revenge, no more bitterness poisoning my every thought. Life was finally good again. Until the past came knocking one last time. It happened on a quiet Sunday morning. I was drinking coffee on my porch, watching the world wake up, when I noticed a familiar figure standing on the sidewalk across the street. Lillian. She was barely recognizable, thin, worn down, broken. Her once perfect hair hung in tangled waves around her face. Her clothes were faded, cheap, nothing like the designer outfits she used to flaunt. She stood there, staring at the house she once ruled, her eyes empty and lost. For a moment I felt nothing. Not anger. Not pity. Just indifference. Then she did something I didn't expect. She raised her hand in a small, weak wave. I sighed, rubbing a hand down my face. Not this again. I could ignore her. Walk inside and pretend she didn't exist. But a part of me, the part that had once loved her, once built a life with her, needed to know. So I stood, walked down the porch steps, and crossed the street. "What do you want, Lillian?" She let out a shaky breath, her eyes filling with something I couldn't quite place. "I just wanted to see you one last time." Chapter 32, No Redemption Left. Her words didn't move me. I wasn't stupid. This wasn't some heartfelt goodbye. She wanted something. I folded my arms. "What do you mean, one last time? You dying or something?" She let out a hollow laugh. "Might as well be." I didn't respond. I just waited, watching her squirm under my silence. Finally she sighed. "I lost everything, Dale. And I know I deserve it. But I can't fix my life. I've tried. I can't get a job, I can't find a stable place to stay. No one will help me." I tilted my head. "Not my problem." She swallowed hard. "Marissa won't speak to me." Good." She flinched like I had slapped her. "You did this to yourself, Lillian," I said, voice cold and firm. "I gave you my loyalty for years. I gave you a family, a home, a life. And you burned it to the ground because you thought you could do better. Turns out you couldn't. And now you want me to feel sorry for you?" She blinked rapidly, trying to stop the tears from falling. "I just want a second chance." I laughed, shaking my head. "No, Lillian. That ship has sailed, crashed, and sunk to the bottom of the ocean." She sniffled. "Then what am I supposed to do?" I stared at her, the woman I had once built a life with, and gave her the only answer that mattered. "Figure it out." Then I turned around and walked away. This time for good. Chapter 33, The Final Closure. That was the last time I ever saw Lillian. A week later, Marissa came home from college for the weekend. She looked happier. Lighter. Like she had finally let go of the weight she had been carrying for so long. That night, we sat on the porch, drinking iced tea and watching the stars. "Did you know Mom came by last week?" I asked casually. She tensed. What did she want? A second chance? She let out a quiet, bitter laugh. Typical. I turned to her. "You okay with that?" She nodded. "Yeah. I don't think I ever want to see her again." I studied her carefully, searching for doubt. There was none. She had finally made her choice. And for the first time, she had chosen herself. I reached over and squeezed her hand. "I'm proud of you, kiddo." She smiled, and for the first time in a long time, everything felt right. Lillian was gone. And we were finally free. Chapter 34, A Life Rebuilt. 1 year. That's how long it had been since Lillian tried to crawl back into my life. Since she stood across the street looking like a shell of the woman I once knew. Since I walked away for good. And in that time, everything changed. Marissa was thriving. She was finishing her second year of college, working part-time, and had finally let go of her guilt. We still had difficult conversations sometimes, but we were stronger now, more honest with each other. As for me, I had built something new. After years of pouring my life into my business and my revenge, I finally let myself move on. I had met someone real, kind, nothing like Lillian. We weren't rushing things, but for the first time in years I felt excited about the future instead of haunted by the past. One evening as I sat on my back porch, Marissa joined me, setting down 2 beers, one for me, one for herself. I raised an eyebrow. "You're still underage," she grinned. "In this house. Exceptions can be made." I laughed, shaking my head. She had grown so much. No longer that naive girl who blindly believed everything her mother fed her. She sighed, looking at the sky. "I never thought we'd be here, you know? A year ago, I was so sure I'd lost you forever." I exhaled. "I thought I lost you too." She looked down at the beer in her hands, twisting the cap absent-mindedly. "Do you think she'll ever come back?" I didn't answer right away. I had asked myself the same thing. Lillian was like a cockroach. No matter how many times she was knocked down, she always found a way to crawl back. But this time? I wasn't worried. "If she does, she won't find what she's looking for," I said simply. Marissa nodded, as if finally accepting that truth. We sat there watching the stars, drinking our beers in peaceful silence. For the first time in years I felt whole again. Chapter 35, The Final Attempt. I should have known Lillian would make one last desperate move. It happened 6 months later, when I least expected it. I was at work, in a meeting with potential investors, when I got a text from an unknown number. "Unknown. Meet me at the diner on 5th Street. We need to talk. Please." I knew who it was immediately. Lillian. I stared at the message, debating whether or not to ignore it. Part of me wanted to pretend she didn't exist, to never see her face again. But another part needed to end this for good. So that evening I walked into the rundown diner on 5th Street and found her sitting in a booth near the back. She looked worse than the last time I had seen her. Thinner. Tired. Her hands shook slightly as she sipped her coffee. She looked up when she saw me, her eyes desperate, hopeful. I sat down across from her. "This is the last time, Lillian. Make it count." She swallowed hard. "I don't have anything left, Dale." I said nothing. She exhaled shakily. "I've been staying in a shelter. No job, no friends, no family. And I know it's my fault. I thought I had time to fix it." I folded my arms. "And what exactly do you want from me?" She licked her lips, nervous. "I need help." I let out a dry laugh. "Help? From me?" She nodded. "Not money. Just a connection. A chance. You know people, Dale. You could help me find work, get back on my feet." I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "You didn't care about getting back on your feet when you were sleeping with Steven and spending my money?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I know. You didn't care when you let our daughter turn against me." A single tear slipped down her cheek. "I know." I tilted my head. "So why should I care now?" She had no answer. I stood up, throwing a few bills on the table for the coffee she probably couldn't afford. "You made your choice, Lillian. Now live with it." Then I walked out. For the last time. Chapter 36, The Final Move. That was the last I ever saw of Lillian. She tried calling me once after that meeting, but I never answered. Eventually she stopped trying. And just like that, she was finally gone. Life moved forward. Marissa graduated college, found a good job, started her own life. We still talked regularly, had Sunday dinners, and she always made sure to remind me, "You're the best dad I could have asked for." I moved on too. Fully, completely. I got engaged to the woman who had shown me what real love looks like. No lies, no manipulation, just honesty. One evening as I sat in my backyard watching the sun set, Marissa called me. "Hey kiddo. What's up?" She hesitated. "I just wanted to tell you. I heard about Mom." I raised an eyebrow. "What about her?" A long pause. Then, "She left town. No one knows where she went." I didn't say anything. Then finally I sighed. Good. And for the first time in forever, Lillian was truly gone. This time, it was over. Chapter 37. Peace comes at last. It had been 5 years since Lillian vanished. 5 years since she disappeared from my life, my thoughts, my world. And for 5 years? I hadn't looked back. Marissa was doing great. She had found a solid job, was engaged to a great guy, and had grown into a woman I was proud of. She no longer carried the guilt of her past choices. She had learned, healed, and built her own life. As for me, I was finally happy. My business had expanded beyond anything I had imagined. I had a home I loved, a fiancé who truly cared about me, and for the first time in forever, my life was drama-free. One morning as I sat on my porch drinking coffee, I got a call from Marissa. "Hey Dad, have a second?" I smiled. "Always." She hesitated before saying, "I heard something." "About Mom?" I frowned. "What is it?" "Someone said she's in a rehab center out of state." I blinked. Of all the things I had expected, that wasn't one of them. "Rehab?" "Yeah," she sighed. "Apparently she hit rock bottom a few years ago. Drinking got bad. She ended up in jail for a while before finally checking herself in." I exhaled, rubbing my jaw. I wasn't sure how to feel about that. "Are you thinking of seeing her?" I asked carefully. She paused. "I don't know. Part of me feels like I should. But part of me feels like it's too late." I sighed. "That's something only you can decide, kiddo. But just remember, you don't owe her anything." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I know. I'll let you know what I decide." And just like that, the ghost of Lillian returned for one last haunting. Chapter 38, Facing the Past One Last Time. A week later, Marissa called me again. "I'm going to see her." I exhaled slowly. "Are you sure?" "I have to," she said softly. "Not for her. For me." I understood that. So the next weekend I found myself driving Marissa to the rehab center. I wasn't going to see Lillian. That door was shut forever. But I needed to be there for Marissa, no matter what she chose. The facility was quiet, nestled in the countryside, far away from the chaos of the world. As we pulled up, Marissa turned to me. "You don't have to wait." I met her eyes. "I'm not going anywhere." She gave me a small smile before getting out of the car. I watched her walk inside, my heart heavy but steady. Lillian had taken so much from me. She had stolen my trust, my peace, my years. But she would never take this moment. I sat back in my seat, closed my eyes, and took a deep breath. This was Marissa's choice. Her closure. As for me, I had already found mine. Chapter 40, the final chapter. Closure at last. I sat outside the rehab center, hands resting on the steering wheel, staring at the entrance. It had been 20 minutes since Marissa had gone inside. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't even curious about what was happening in there. Because this wasn't my battle anymore. Years ago, Lillian had been my world. The woman I thought I would grow old with, the woman I built a life with, the mother of the daughter I had raised and loved as my own. She had shattered all of it. And yet, here I was at the very place where she was trying to pick up the broken pieces of herself. I had expected to feel satisfaction. I didn't. I just felt nothing. And that was the real closure. Marissa's last words to her mother. The car door opened and Marissa slid into the passenger seat, silent for a long moment. I glanced at her. "You okay?" She nodded slowly, staring at her hands. "Yeah, I think so." I waited, giving her space. After a moment, she exhaled. "She looks different, Dad. She's not the same person she used to be. It's like she finally understands how much she lost." I didn't respond. Marissa swallowed hard. She apologized. For everything. Said she regrets it all. I tilted my head. "And do you believe her?" She hesitated before shaking her head. "I don't know. And honestly, it doesn't matter. I needed to hear her say it. And now I'm done." I studied her carefully. "Really?" She met my eyes, and for the first time in years I saw complete certainty. "Yeah, Dad. I'm really done." I nodded, starting the engine. "Good. Because now, so was I." The last Father's Day. A year later, Marissa was back home for the weekend. She had graduated college, landed a great job, and had finally, fully, moved forward. And today? Today was Father's Day. We sat on the back porch, the Texas sun warming our faces, steaks sizzling on the grill. Marissa handed me a small wrapped box. I raised an eyebrow. "Didn't we just do this last year?" She laughed. "Just open it, old man." I smirked and tore off the wrapping paper. Inside was a framed photo. The two of us taken years ago at the beach. Back when she was just a kid, sitting on my shoulders, laughing like she had the whole world ahead of her. Below the photo in neat script were the words, "No matter what, you were always my father." I swallowed hard. She reached over, squeezing my hand. "Thank you for never giving up on me." I exhaled, running a hand down my face, shaking my head. Damn it, Marissa. Now I gotta pretend like I'm not crying? She grinned. It's okay. I won't tell anyone. We sat there, watching the sunset, the past finally behind us. Lillian? She was a ghost now. A lesson learned. And the life ahead? It was ours to live. For the first time in years, I felt it deep in my bones. I was free. Happy Father's Day, Dad. I smiled. Yeah, it really is. The end. Fire, thank you for reading. Fire. This story was filled with betrayal, karma, revenge, and redemption. It took us through an emotional roller coaster, and now the journey is finally complete. Speech balloon. Now, I have one question for you. Backhand index pointing right. Do you think Lillian truly deserved a second chance? Or was it too late for her? Let me know in the comments. Loudspeaker, if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to white heavy checkmark like this post. White heavy checkmark subscribe for more gripping stories like this. White heavy checkmark share this with someone who loves a good revenge story. Thanks for being part of this journey. Until next time, rocket fire.